As I'm recording the podcast, I can hear the sound of rains outside. And I'm sure you can hear the noise too. And it's been raining rather pouring for days and weeks now. And that's the reason in the previous newsletter as well as the previous podcast, I specifically talked about the books on Monsoon. And previously I talked about this book called Chasing the Monsoon. It's a wonderful book, and you can check out the newsletter or you can hear the previous podcast. Now, in today's podcast, I'm going to talk about this book by Ruskin Bond called Rain in the Mountains. You know very well about Ruskin Bond. He lives in the Himalayas and writes wonderfully about the experience of life in the Himalayas, in the mountains, in the rural settings of India. And nature is always a key part of his writings. Now that we are in the monsoons, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it from the perspective of a writer who focuses on nature, who sees the events being unfolded outside in the weather, in the nature, in the forest, and also on the inside, how the rains bring in new memories. So I'm going to read a few passages from this book, and I hope you'll enjoy that. So here we go. The book, as it indicates, this particular passage, it was written on 24 June, which means monsoon was just arriving then. Let's start. The first day of monsoon mist, and it's strange how all the birds fall silent as the mist comes climbing up the hill. Perhaps that's what makes the mist so melancholic. Not only does it conceal the hills, it blankets them in silence too. Only an hour ago, the trees were ringing with birdsong, and now the forest is deathly still, as though it were midnight. Through the mist, Biju is calling to his sister. I can hear him running about on the hillside, but I cannot see him. Feeling sorry for Sir E, or maybe for myself, I walked over to see him. The door was closed, so I looked in at the French window. Nothing could be more English than a French window, and no Agatha Christie mystery would be complete without one. I saw him sleeping in his chair with his chin on his chest. There was no dagger sticking out of his back, only a bit of stuffing from his old coat. My footsteps on the gravel woke him, and he got up and opened the door for me. He said he felt a bit tipsy, had taken his usual peg, but thought the quality of whiskey varied from bottle to bottle, and wished he could lay his hands on the bottle of a Scotch or even Irish. He could only offer me an Uttar Pradesh brand. I said I'd given up drinking, and this pleased him, because in truth he hates anyone drinking his whiskey. Said he might give it up himself. It costs too damn much. I told him it would be unwise to give up drinking at this stage of his life, as he had reached the age of 86 on 2 pegs a day. He was obviously thriving on it. Giving it up now would only play havoc with the orderly working of his system. I'd given it up in order to help an alcoholic friend abstain. and also because I wanted to give up something, and strong drink seemed the easiest thing to do without. A cicada starts up in the tree nearest my window seat. What has he been doing all these weeks? Why does he choose this particular moment and this particular evening to play the fiddle so loudly? The cicadas are late this year. The monsoon has been late. But soon the forest will be ringing with the sound of the cicadas. An orchestra constantly tuning up but never quite getting into tune. And the sound of the birds will be pushed into the background. Outside the front door, I found an elegant young praying mantis reclining on a leaf of a honeysuckle creeper. I say young because he hadn't grown to his full size and was that very tender pale green which is the color of a young mantis. They are light brown to begin with, like dry twigs, but as they grow older and the monsoon foliage becomes greener, they too change, and by mid August they are dark green. As though to make up for the lost time, the monsoon rains are now here with a vengeance. It has been pouring all day and already the roof is leaking. But nothing dampens Prem's spirits. He's still singing love songs in the kitchen. Kailash, whom I have known for a couple of weeks, asks me for 25 rupees. What do you need it for? I ask. It's for my Sanskrit teacher, he says. I failed in Sanskrit, but if I give the teacher 25 rupees, he'll alter my marks. You see, I've passed in all the other subjects, but if I fail in Sanskrit, I'll fail the entire exam and remain a pre-inter student for another year. I took a little time to digest this information and ponder on the pitfalls of the examination system. He must be failing a lot of boys, I said. 25 rupees each. Are there many others? Some, he said, but he dare not fail the good ones. They can ask for a recheck. It's the borderline cases like me who give him a chance to make money. This placed me in a quandary. Should I yield to the evils of the examination system and provide the money for passing marks? Or should I adopt a high moral stance and allow the boy to fail? Whatever the evils of the exam, they are not the fault of the student. And either way, he isn't going to turn into a great Sanskrit scholar, so why be a hypocrite? I gave him the money. Kailash slogs in his uncle's orchard all morning, gets a midday meal, and hasn't any shoes. And yet his uncle, a member of one of Garhwal's well-known upper caste families, is a wealthy man. Kailash tells me he will return to his village once he knows his result. According to him, his uncle is such a miser that at meal times he pauses before each mouthful wondering, ought I to eat it? Or should I keep it for tomorrow? I'm visited by another kind of student, a small girl from one of the private schools. Her mother has brought her to me for my autograph. She studies your book in class 6th, I was informed. And what book is that? I asked the little girl. Tom Sawyer, she replied promptly. And so I signed for Mark Twain. When a small storeroom collapsed during the last heavy rains, I was forced to rescue a couple of old packing cases that had been left there for 3 or 4 years since my arrival here, in fact. The contents were well soaked and most of it had to be thrown away. Old manuscripts that had been obliterated, negatives that had got stuck together, gramophone records that had taken on strange shapes, and much more. Unlike most writers, I've no compunction about throwing away work that hasn't quite come off, and I'm sure there are few critics who would prefer that I throw away the lot. Sentimental rubbish, no doubt. Well, we can't please everyone, and we can't preserve everything either. Time and the elements will take their toll. So, these were some of the passages that I was narrating from the book. And as you can see, book, this particular book is not really written in a typical manner. You can see there are certain gaps. He's jumping from one scene to another, from one memory to another. These are just notes from the book of, or the notebook of Ruskin Bond. And he's sharing his memories, his experiences. And I find it quite fun to read. It's like he's capturing the moment as it is. He's recording down the events as they take place. He's not really putting a lot of effort in the editing. He's just presenting things as they are. And I hope if you get a chance to read the book, you'll have a good time too. So enjoy and happy monsoon, happy reading. Thank you.